you get to see Emporia State on Saturday?
Yes. Yeah, I did till halftime and then headed out.
This senior class, obviously a big in number class, but what's the impact from your perspective just on this bunch?
Oh, those guys have, a lot of them been here for 6 years. And each year when they depart, I can't decide whether I think that they just got here or if they've been here forever. With all the classes that are meshing nowadays. But these guys have won a lot of games. They've been very committed to the organization. I noticed the other day when I was looking, we'll have 26 seniors walking or whatever they do pregame. And these guys have gotten really good degrees, like minors, and some of them are double majors and post-grad. But their commitment to the organization's been really special, just like all of them. It takes a lot, and those guys have been very successful.
You've got guys like Colin, Rashad, Brennan, I mean, guys that have not only long-timers, but have been through ups, downs, injuries, just all the things. Are there any of those guys in particular that sort of have made that class, maybe given them the characteristics of the personality that they have?
Well, I think some of the names you've mentioned, and what's interesting is the different classes. I think there's actually 3 recruiting classes of players that are going to be out there for senior day, which is very unusual, which obviously looks to be the future. But I would still go back to just the core values that we have in this organization that they've been able to uphold for a number of years.
With Brennan in particular, in that we've talked a lot about all the things he does on the field. You mentioned you think he should be an All-American, those sorts of things. But from the culture aspect, what has he meant over his time here?
Yeah, we use him as an example a lot. I think I shared with you guys where I've been trying to hold him out of practices the last month, and he'll come in and visit with me individually about wanting to practice, and I've worked to convince him that his body needs a rest, and he refuses to take a break. He just continues to compete, and that's really a great role model for the younger players. As we work toward keeping continuity and core and physical toughness and mental toughness and things, he's a great role model for those young players.
When Brennan argues that he wants to be in practice, he doesn't want to be held out, what does he say specifically about why?
He just says that's what I do. He says I'm a football player, and he gave me an example of some of the training that he did in the summer on his own outside of our activities, and the reason that he did it was to prepare for this time of the year.
Another unique one in this class, Cody Walterscheid, sixth year, butted up to 5 years from his brother, so 11 straight years
Right.
with a Walterscheid. That's pretty interesting.
Yes, his family, I see his parents, and then the growing family. Now I noticed the mom's holding a baby. I'm guessing that's a grandkid. They're in the same place on the walk. And it just happens that when I get to a certain point that for whatever reason I can see them. Obviously his dad's like 6'9", so it's not hard to miss him. But I see him there, and I thought of that the other day because they've been there, I was going to say 10 plus, and for a number of years that they've been right there on the walk. And that family's been a big part of our football team.
Going back to Brennan, wasn't a highly recruited guy. Was there a moment in high school, whenever you saw him playing high school ball, that you're like, we've got to get this kid on the team?
I think I shared this with you guys, but in the summer prior to his senior year, Gunner was playing in a 7-on-7 tournament in Arkansas, and Bixby was in the same tournament. It's a highly competitive 7-on-7 tournament they have over there in Fayetteville every summer. And they play about 8 games a day, which is obviously just skill set. Each game's about 30 minutes, but essentially there's a lot of running. And he played both sides of the ball in every game that he played that I saw. And then when we played against Bixby, he played offense and defense. Most in about 100 degrees. It was the latter part of June. So most of the young men that are in that have a hard time finishing that day, much less the second day. And he played both ways. and then he made a lot of plays. And at that point, I came home and visited with the staff that I just felt like that we needed to take him no matter how big he was based on his level of competition, which is true even to this day, saying that he wants to practice when I'm not trying to get him to practice.
Because of, I mean, we don't know what's coming change-wise in college football, but with the senior class this big, is there a likelihood we'll never see other senior classes like of this size with players that have been around this long? I mean, are we sort of hitting a point of inflection when it comes to senior classes, senior days, and what we're going to see?
Yeah,
in
I
the
think two
future?
things. I don't think you'll see any more large senior classes, and then the actual senior days will be hard to hold. It'll just be different. It's not like it used to be, but I'm going to doubt that you'll have large senior classes, particularly like this one.
In the last 18 years, you've always had another motivation on senior day to win the game. You've been in races for divisions to get, Big 12 honors, bowl games, all that. This is just a real senior day, and guys, you'll have a last game at home. How do you approach that with the team about this is pretty serious? These guys want to go out of here on top.
Well, there's a game and competition. Same thing that I would say each week, in that when these guys walk on campus, they should be committed to themselves and to the team, and then to whoever helped get them here, and their family or whoever raised them and put a lot into them. And so either way, the most important thing that they can do is continue to train and work and stay together and compete, which they have. They've done a great job. They practiced really well last week, and I would expect them to practice really well this week.
What did you think of last week? Because you did something, I can't remember going a week of just in shells, but you did, and how'd that turn out?
We had 3 practices of very light contact. I just felt like at this point the guys were physically beat up, and I wanted them to be fresh mentally when they came back today or yesterday to restart for this week. And we'll see what happens in practice this week, but I was pleased with last week's practices.
So really last week, the goal was to be really on top of it for this week. By going light.
Well, we prepared for Texas Tech. We've got a lot accomplished from a scheme and a concept standpoint, but I felt like physically that they needed a break, and you don't always know if you're right or wrong when you make those decisions, but that's what we did last week.
Mike, I know nothing's official, at least I don't think it is, with Ollie and Nick, but is there any plan to try to honor them if this is their last game on this field for you guys?
Ollie and Nick
Martin.
I'm not sure what you mean.
Like if they go to the NFL. It seems like that's a strong likelihood for both of them.
Yeah, I would think that Colin and Nick and Ollie would be heading to the NFL. I don't think that Ollie's name is on the list for pregame recognition. He might have come to our administration, but I have not been made aware of it.
Not to turn the page too much on these seniors, but with these last 2 games, do you see an opportunity to get more young guys involved?
Only if they can help us win the game. So the plans that we have together, the practices that we have this week will be to do whatever we think it takes to win this game. And if there's young guys that can help us, then we'll put them in position to help us. If not, we won't just put a young guy in just for experience.
You played some young guys defensively last game. We haven't talked to you since we saw you post-game, but what did you think of the defensive youngsters that maybe got in there?
They did some good things, and then there were things they needed to correct. Just exactly what you would expect from a young player, that they show signs of being competitive and making plays, and that there could be a good future, but there's a lot of things we needed to work on to get them better for this game.
Did you like to the fact that you had some film that you could show those guys, is that sort of a positive?
Yeah, it's the very best way to learn. Put them out there, let's see what they can do. There's a little bit of a risk-reward policy, as you know, but we needed some depth last week, 2 weeks ago, whenever that was. we needed some depth, and so we had to play some young guys in those positions.
You've gotten, I guess, 2 series from Milwaukee Smith now. How have you seen him grow from the opportunity to go in and be able to study his own film and those sorts of things?
Well, he's grown from just practicing with us for a month. Prior to 4 weeks ago, he was not even practicing with us. And then we moved him up, and he made a little bit of progress each week. And then obviously playing in a game helps him a little bit. He has stayed competitive, but he's improved more from being in practice with us than he has just a minimal number of game reps that he's gotten to this point.
I think at one point, a couple of weeks ago, maybe you said that he and Allen were basically splitting 50-50 in terms of reps. Has it still been that way?
Well, we didn't really practice. Like last week's weren't really practice. It was more mental preparation.
Your running backs were, by a lot of different stats, were the most productive they've been in the last game. Was there, a specific thing y'all executed at better in that game to
We
sort of lead
blocked
to that?
better. We came off the ball and got more movement and blocked more physical in that game than we had in a couple months.
Is there anything y'all changed or did differently in practice do you think led to that, or just finally kind of came together?
And we didn't change anything in practice, and concepts are the same. They just came off the ball and played better, in my opinion, and were a little more physical, and that allowed us to have more 4 to 9 yard runs than we've had all year.
Like Robert said a second ago, lots of times you guys have gotten to senior day and there's all sorts of things you're playing for, Big 12 title games, those sorts of things. If you had some sort of magic ability to change one thing this season to get you guys to a position for this senior day to have a similar scenario, is there anything that you think one thing could have changed very dramatically the course of this season?
If we'd have stayed healthy, made a big difference.
Across the board or anyone in
Well,
particular?
we struggled. We've talked about this, but, when we lost Colin and Nick on defense, we became a completely different defensive football team. And that was tough for us to overcome from a rep standpoint, production standpoint, and the ability to get pressure on a quarterback with a 4-man rush.
I know you may shoot this down, and I don't mind if you do.
What's
but
that?
Offensive line, defensive line, you're losing so many of those guys that you'll honor on Saturday. Defensive line, you just mentioned losing Colin this season was such a big impact. Are those really the most critical areas for you marching forward out of the season, is to get better on both sides of the line of scrimmage?
Oh, I don't know that one or the other would be more critical. I think that, they are. I mean, up front, I don't know that it's any different now than it would be any other year. The only thing that might relate to the question that you asked is we have so many offensive linemen that had been here for an extended period of time. They're all, those guys are at least 2 and 3 year starters. So we'll be in a little bit of a different space there, more so than we would be on the defensive line. We're going to be replacing some guys, but not anything out of the ordinary. Offensive line, considerable number of guys that have been here for quite a while.
But talent infusion too, getting guys that can be more forceful and
we don't try to get as physical guys as we can, and there'll be a lot of things happen in December. You'll have high school signing day. I guess they call it, there's no national letter of intent anymore, financial aid signing day, whatever they're going to call that. You have that, and then you'll have movement with the portal. So there'll be a lot of things going on in December.
What do you think about that new calendar with the portal opening? I think it's December 2nd, and then the signing day or whatever it is on Wednesday. It's a pretty rapid succession there.
Not really thought about it much. It's, the portal's been open in December for a number of years now. The signing day, I guess, has moved up some, right? A couple weeks, something like that. It's all just kind of happening at once.
Does it change if you make any staff changes? Does any of that factor into how quick some of that would have to happen with those two things happening?
I don't know. I mean, not really. I don't know. I haven't thought about that kind of stuff. You know, I don't know what would be the barometer across the country. I know that the thing that'll be different is we don't use national letter of intents now because essentially they're irrelevant. A national letter of intent doesn't mean anything. So they're using financial aid for the signing day. But if you look at the big picture, I'm not sure that means anything either. So it's going to be interesting in December is kind of what I'm saying, because so let's say hypothetically, if a high school player signs on the 4th with a financial aid and then he decides he doesn't want to come, he just goes somewhere else.
One thing that will be different is, and you don't want this to happen, I get that. You guys left. You guys were at the airport on signing day last year. You did your signing day news conference, if I'm not mistaken, in the airport over at Stillwater Municipal. This year, like I said, I know you want to be going somewhere, but through that portal period and through that period, you'll be working out of your base here. Should that make a difference in what you get done in that versus having to multitask with the bowl game? Or have you even thought about it?
Well, they'll be multitasking. There'll be a lot going on in December.
Right.
You still have a lot of things going on. There'll be a lot of moving parts. You know, there's thought that has to be put into some of that, but I'm still going to go back to the interesting thing is that there's not really anything binding that we do in December anymore. So I don't know, you know, what pageantry there will be for that anymore, right? So I'm guessing that because I've heard some of the scuttlebutt between agents of high school players that are soliciting their prospects for money, in that if they sign, they still don't have to go to the school that they sign with if they don't want to in the big picture. So it'll just be much different than ever. That's why there's not really a lot, you know, we're all just kind of feeling our way through it.
Is that part of why you said you hadn't really thought about staff changes, influence, and timing in that? Is that part of the reason why it's like,
Well,
whatever's going to
I
happen?
haven't thought about any of that. The thing that we as a staff are trying to get accomplished is we have a good class of high school players that we want to be the next group for 2025. There's a lot of opinions going around, but we think that that's important to continuing some core values. You have the uncertainty of what the portal will bring you or take away from you in December. And so you can have some broad thought, but to get into real detail at now would be a little uncertain from the standpoint we really don't know. We just have to wait and see what happens. I'm guessing there'll be a lot of clarity on December 4th through the 6th. There'll be clarity on kind of what direction everybody needs to move.
What do you make of Texas Tech?
They've played good at times this year, you know. The quarterback's made plays. Obviously, the back's a good player. I've been impressed with their defense. I think that they've improved considerably, in my opinion. They're very active. They do a good job of running to the ball. They're multiple up front. They do a lot of different things, and they've had success with it.
You've long talked about the parity in this league. Does getting to now in the middle of November, has anything surprised you with just how crazy the league has been this season?
No, I've said this for 2 or 3 years now. The parity, it's across college football, right? You're seeing it everywhere. And I don't know, a couple years ago I said you're going to see the bulk of this league will be maybe 5, 6, and 7 win teams in this league. I haven't looked, but that's probably going to be pretty accurate this year, right? And this will continue on in the standpoint that essentially we're playing with an NFL standard, which is free agency, which can create a lot of equality and allows teams that maybe have a tough year can really recover next year through the right maneuvering. So at some point, if we ever get a grip on how we're going to move forward financially, they should have a good product in the end.
Were you up late enough to see the quick kick Kansas used to get the winning touchdown?
I didn't even get to see the kickoff. That's what time it was for me. It's like I told the officials at BYU before the game, if I fall asleep in the second quarter, somebody wake me up and act like I care. But I said it'll be late for me.
This time of year, we're usually getting ready for a Bedlam matchup. I think we might have asked you last year what it would be like without, and now we're in a season without. Have you given much thought to the fact that rivalry is gone?
You know, it's interesting with them. I haven't given much thought to that. And you know, it's almost like, what's that quote? Out of sight, out of mind. I almost don't really even pay attention. I don't even know who they play each week anymore. Of course, we're consumed with here, but generally I would keep an eye on them a little bit because I knew that we had to play them. But I haven't even really paid attention to much of anything that's gone on down there. And I didn't know that I would ever be able to predict that. But that's, you know, you asked the question, and that's honestly, I mean, I didn't know they didn't play last weekend. I just haven't kept up with them. It's been much different.
I mean, you don't even see crossover tape anymore, which I'm sure
I
you
don't
probably
see
saw
them
a
at
lot
all.
of it.
Yeah, I don't see them. I just hear the same scuttlebutt that you guys do about what's going on, but I don't see them in Mall. I watched them play somebody. I don't know who it was. I don't remember, but I saw them play somebody, and South Carolina, because I was on a plane coming home from somewhere, and I saw a half of that game. That's all I've seen of them this year.
I think it was Iman that was telling a story. Iman Knows was telling a story about sitting next to you on multiple plane rides this year. He seems like he'd be a fun guy to be on a plane with, for one. But what's that like having a guy, a player there that he said y'all would both get like iPads going and watch games and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I used to sit in the middle of the plane, and then because we move all of our players up into first class, and then I started getting claustrophobic on airplanes, and it started freaking me out a little bit. So then I had to move up to the front, and it's been a really good experience for me to be up there with those guys and sit next to some of the players and just kind of listen to them. And what it reminds you of as a coach is, in the end, they're just kids. They're goofy. In order to hide his identity, I won't reveal who it is, but there's a guy that sits 2 seats over from me that's, you know, these young kids now, they do everything on their phones like y'all do too. I'm sure you're smart enough. I don't know how to do much on my phone, but he's watched his Pokemon cartoons, and I thought, they're just big kids. He's over there watching a Pokemon. The whole plane ride, he watched a Pokemon cartoon. So I was trying to determine whether that was good or bad. But it's been interesting. Oates is very entertaining. He's always got something to say. Very street smart, very high IQ streetwise. In the world, it's interesting the way he sees things. So it's been very entertaining to ride with the guys and listen to them up there.
I think he got his first sack this year in the last game. He was pretty excited about that. Is it nice for you to see guys still find those moments that they can be happy about?
Yeah, it is. And you know, the interesting thing with these guys is they what I've been most pleased with is they have kept a high level of energy and enthusiasm during the season, which is not easy to do. And that's one area that I was concerned about starting about 5 weeks ago. And of course, each week in my position, you get a little more concerned about it. And then, you know, how to motivate, keep them motivated, keep them practicing hard, all the things that are important to try to give themselves the best chance to play well on a Saturday. And those guys have done a really good job of staying committed to each other. And as I've watched them grow through the year, it's been positive in a funny way for them, which will affect them the rest of their life.
Mike, not since your first season have you guys had less than at least 2 or 3 conference wins, chance to get 2. That, I mean, obviously that's the standard you set as the head coach here, that kind of winning mentality. To get a win or 2, how important do you feel like that is?
Well, I think it's important. I want when the clock runs out, I want to be ahead so they can celebrate and they can enjoy the work and the effort. And I see what they do each week. I see them working hard, and I'm proud of them for it. And I try to teach them and instill in them the values and things they're learning by continuing to do this. But it would be nice if we found a way to win the game to where they could kind of enjoy it and say, hey, you know, I learned to toughen up and push through it and be tough, and here's a reward. So from that standpoint, it would be nice for them to be able to win the game and then them see that all that's paid off.
Anything else?
You talked about morale, like the players kind of staying together, staying upbeat. How have the coaches kind of responded to, you know, the season not going as it's gone? Like
They've been fine. They work. You know, coaches are consumed with 14, 16-hour days in preparation, and they're creatures of habit, and they just like robots during the week. We're all the same. We hide in our work, and you know, we go to work at dark and we come home at dark, and that allows us to continue with our lifestyle and our livelihood and our jobs more so than all the other stuff going on. So it's much easier for coaches than it is for players, would be my guess.
Because several times after games, you're like, you know, we didn't love this game plan. We didn't love how this game plan played out. Has that, you know, taken a toll on like the coaching staff, or I guess more so than players who go out there, the game's over, they can watch film, whereas coaches, they spend all week getting this plan for TCU, and it doesn't go the way they want it to. Have you seen that kind of?
I haven't seen anything where it's eating on them. I'm sure that there have been games they wish they would have done a better job, but they're in a more professional part and place in their life than the young players are, the young men. So they should be able to handle it, and I've seen them handle it much differently, and they've been fine. They're working, and again, which I remind them, I mean, my job is to make sure that they're energetic and enthusiastic every single day. So I push that hard, and then the players in most cases are going to respond to what they're seeing the coaches do. Good. All right, guys. Thanks.